Good morning and welcome to the 83rd episode of the Veritas Fact-Finding Series. And this morning, I'm joined by Dr. Stacy Irvine. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
We designed this program in the wake of the COVID pandemic as a way to find the truth. In each episode, we go on the ground with industry professionals in an unscripted, candid video format to better understand how the pandemic will affect the future of our economy, our life, and of course, our investments. By way of background, my name is Scilipoti, and I'm the president of the Veritas Group, which is an independent equity research firm based in Toronto, Canada. And I'm proud to say we're celebrating this year 22 years, 100% employee-owned and operated. During this series, and with everything we do, we believe the truth comes from the facts and that better information leads to better investment decisions. Quick note of a disclaimer, this broadcast is not to be taken as investment advice, and participants or employees of Veritas Group may own securities discussed in this broadcast. While we love all our guests, and Dr. Irvine especially, this session may contain forward-looking statements, investment opinions, and comments that we may not agree with at all. Imagine that. Now, let me just tell you as briefly as I can about, can I call you Stacy? Is that okay?
That's great.
Good. So Stacy's worked in health and fitness for industry for most of her life. First, she was a coach of figure skating, track and field, and eventually ballet. And she's been dedicated to training athletes and competing for provincial and national teams throughout Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. And she trains from elite athletes to beginners. That's what I think is what I found most interesting about her experience training. In 1993, she had a crazy idea. She's going to start a gym, but a new type of gym, which we're going to talk about that, called Totum Life Science. Her company is a national leader in sports medicine, fitness, and health industry, with now 5 locations in Toronto. And they've managed to survive this pandemic, which congratulations, cheers to you and the work and your efforts that you've done pivoting, which we're going to discuss in detail. She's an avid outdoor enthusiast. Of course, she's a mom, a wife, and she loves being in her Airstream trailer, she tells me, which is parked in a small private lake in the woods of Muskoka. And I think what we're going to get into today stems from her book that she's recently published called Your Better Instincts. Okay. And the concept really, and this is why it really intrigued me, because she speaks in a holistic way. We're not just talking about health and fitness. We're not just talking about improving your, ways of looking at things. It's also expands really nicely your instincts in our business. When we're in the business of doing research, when we're in the business of managing money, it's all about instincts. How do we make our instincts better? And so our major goal of your better instincts is to convince you not to ignore your human instincts, but instead find ways to turn them into your own superpowers. Stacy, thanks for being on the show.
I'm very excited.
I forgot to mention something that I know all the listeners and watching on today didn't notice, that Stacy is a Leaf fan. Now, those that have been watching over the last couple of years will know that I'm a small Leaf fan. So in honor of the Leafs today, I'm also I have my Tiffany limited edition Leaf cufflinks. All right. So Stacy, I always like to start out by asking our guests, what do you do? How do you do it? And most especially, why do you do what you do?
Wow, that's a big question, and you covered a lot of it. I think the piece of my background, I guess, that we didn't talk about, but it's, the book explains a lot of it extensively, is I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan. So I come from a small town farming background, and a lot of my work ethic was developed there, and a lot of my caring about a community and caring about other human beings was also developed there. I went from that world to the world of elite athletics, where I competed in various sports and eventually, heptathlon, and then after heptathlon onto the Royal Winnipeg Ballet, where I trained for a few years. And that is probably the most formative thing that you could say about me, is that I'm really, in many ways, obsessed about performance, and especially human performance. And I really get excited about things in our lives that can help all of us perform better. And the other really important part, which I think ties in very nicely with the work that you do, is that I am very obsessed with science and facts. And part of the motivation of writing this book is, we're hearing all these conspiracy theories these days. We're inundated with them. Well, I can tell you that the world of fitness has been dealing with conspiracy type theories for the last 30 years, right? There's always a new diet that's crazy. There's always a new way to work out that is also crazy, but they gain traction because, we have these spokespeople out there who are very dramatic and who, push these things as the next latest and greatest. And I really wanted to write a book that kind of talked about why these things really kind of gain our interest, and then what do we do about them to make better decisions so that we are actually following the facts and we're following the science. And it was a great pleasure to write the book. I feel very privileged to have had the time to do that.
And with that, I wanted to take the quote, because your book is excellent and it's very timely. It talks about what we've just been through and continue to go through in this lockdown. It's written right from that perspective. It kind of starts out where she explains what we've been feeling and why we've been feeling what we're feeling, and the impacts that it's going to have potentially going forward, which we're going to get to. But everybody thinks about, remembers Darwin, and you think about survival of the fittest, right? But the quote from Darwin, which I'm going to read to you quickly here, really captures the essence of what we're talking about here with instincts. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that is the most adaptable to change. The very essence of instinct is that it is followed independently of reason. And I think that's why I wanted to really have Dr. Irvine on to talk to us about how to get our instincts better. So before we get to that, you're obviously a business owner. You've gone through what is probably the most challenging time that I hope you'll ever have to go through, and you won't have anything like this again. But how does a gym that's been forced shut essentially for 2 years continue to operate and be ready to open next week?
Well, we called upon that quote that you just read and we adapted, and that is the only way that we survived. We started with an interest in artificial intelligence and virtual healthcare prior to the pandemic. And from the day of the first lockdown, which, if you remember, was kind of right around March break a couple years ago.
Yep, March 16th.
Yeah, within 3 days, we had pivoted and brought up virtual training, virtual rehab. It was the most stressful 3 days of my life. I would sit at the computer and then I'd go up to my bedroom and I'd cry for a while, and then I'd come back to the computer. Our team was amazing. We have, some people much younger than me that are way better at all this digital transformation and understanding. I couldn't even figure out Zoom. The first time I tried to do it, I wanted to throw my computer across the room. It was a lot of teamwork. It was a lot of communication with our team. And it was kind of, I have to give a huge shout out to my husband, Tim, who is the president of Totum. It was excellent leadership that said, we're in this together. We're going to be okay. We're going to put you guys first. We're going to put our clients first. We're going to keep you informed. We're going to communicate regularly, and we're going to navigate this as best we can, and we're going to adapt. So we had to have many town halls with our team The rules, I'm sure you remember, they changed constantly. So we'd be on the phone on hold. This is not an exaggeration. In the early days, you'd get on hold from the public health department for hours because you were just trying to get answers as to what you had to do, within your business and what the requirements were. We did that for hours. Then we relayed the information to our clients. We relayed it to our team, and we just kept moving forward. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy. But we feel very confident that we're here and we're here to stay. And, at some point we'll take some time to celebrate with our team, hopefully that, this is behind us.
I'm looking forward to that. That's great. And that, I'm not going to call it a gym. Your fitness and wellness center is probably a better way to call it, but it's unique because the word totem itself, being a Latin word like Veritas, has important meaning to what's different about your facility and your way of thinking about health. Maybe you could tell us about that.
Totem means a lot to us on many different levels, and we chose that word because it means whole. And when we first started Totum, we're almost 25 years, there were no facilities that brought together sports medicine and training. So there were a bunch of gyms, and then there were clinics that were doing sports medicine, but nobody was doing it together. Mm-hmm. And personal training it was just gaining some traction. What we wanted to do was to merge those two things, because we were finding our clients were, seeing us and saying, okay, I'm working on this injury and I'm doing this rehab, but you're saying one thing, and then my doctor's saying another thing. My doctor's saying, take these anti-inflammatories, go home, lie down, and I don't know what I should be doing. And we decided that that's not the way to go. The way to go is to work as a team so that a client can come in and have all their needs addressed in one place. The other thing that was very big for us was the place should be well designed, it should be inviting, and it should be beautiful. Life is too short to spend in gyms with like fluorescent lights over our heads and 100 treadmills in a row. So we made a point of designing spaces with local designers to make them beautiful so that people would want to come in the gym. It wasn't a membership churning kind of business. It was a community building type of business. Well
ahead of your time. And I'm looking forward to what happens as you keep pivoting. So now here you are, let's say the pandemic is easing and we'll go into a better time for opening up. So let's talk about your methodology and what you're speaking about when you talk about people's instincts and why that's so important.
Instincts are what drives most of our human behavior. And similar to what happens at Veritas is you are based on finding data, gaining knowledge, and then making decisions based on what you find. And then also you're looking at what's happening in your surroundings. Mm-hmm. So there's very important things that we need to understand with our human instincts. And there's areas that they fall into. So there's instincts related to health and survival. There's instincts related to performance, and then there's instincts related to happiness. So, what types of things do we need as human beings that will make us happy? So I'm going to start with the health. The reason we're having so many issues with our health, even prior to this pandemic, you and I talked about this before, our life expectancy, especially in the US, was going down. Never in our lifetime has that happened. And I believe one of the reasons that is happening is that our bodies are the same bodies that millions of years ago were designed to be hunters, gatherers, to be out moving in the day. And we were supposed to have a certain amount of movement and motion and fresh air and time in nature. Time in nature actually impacts our hormones on a physiological level. When we remove all of that, and especially now when we're locked in our homes, we're staring at computer screens, we're not moving as much as we need to, we are going to see our health deteriorate. And that's not just our physical health, that is our mental health. So that's one aspect of instincts that are obviously crucially important. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything, right? The second piece of instincts are performance. So human beings love to be challenged. We love to learn. We love to communicate with each other. And again, when we're not seeing each other in person, we are not doing the best we can to perform, and we are not able to get inspired in the same ways that we were. And then the final piece, the happiness and the connective part of our instincts. Again, life in isolation was never how we were designed to be. We, all of us on this call would be having a lot more fun if we were like sitting around a dinner table talking about these things as opposed to looking into our screens. I love that technology has allowed us to, quickly reach each other and look at each other, but this period of isolation has been really hard on our mental health, and the idea of not being able to know what we're looking forward to. So the uncertainty has also been pretty detrimental on our mental health and our ability to stay motivated and stay connected. So the thing with instincts that I believe, and the reason this book is so big, is that there's a lot of instincts. And at the end of the book, I talk about, kind of things about instincts, and the high performers that I was able to interview, we had some wonderful discussions about their instincts and how they use them. And I really believe that, like what you do with your investing, we don't just follow things. So instincts are the same. The better we understand them, the better we know how to use them. So I don't believe in the statement, follow your instincts. I believe in the statement, understand your instincts, learn as much as you can about them, and then you can use them in a very powerful way.
Maybe you could give us an example, because when I think about health and fitness, you touched on, and what's been happening. And let's talk pre-pandemic, we're already, obesity is a problem, diabetes is a problem, life expectancy is beginning to be a problem. And then we get hit with COVID. And now we're going to hopefully come out of COVID. And what can we do to make sure we can offset these by bettering our instincts?
To me, the things that would be the best start for bettering our instincts would be to start paying attention to the ones related to our health, because I truly believe our health has suffered the most. I think most of us have been using our brains, and we've been still involved in our workplace while we've been in the pandemic. But the things that are missing are daily movement and very good rest. So I just did a talk yesterday with TD Securities about insomnia. And insomnia is a big problem during this pandemic because our schedules and routines have been messed up. Rest and sleep are part of our instincts. Our body wants to move during the day. It wants to be outside, and then it wants to come home. And when it's dark, it wants to rest and it wants to go to sleep. Those are all human instincts. And I think if we can get back to more movement, better rest, better sleep. And then there's a whole chapter in the book on instinctual eating. And unfortunately, alcohol is not a part of instinctual eating.
Come on.
As much as I enjoy it, more than anyone. We have to really focus. I think those are the basics we focus on first to get our energy levels back up, to get our excitement for life back up. And then I think that's going to allow us to accomplish great things coming out of this pandemic.
You think about performance, and I think, we're all about performing every day, every second. The people that are watching here, they're being measured against a benchmark, they're being measured against an expectation. And we're trying to anticipate what's going to happen, which way is the market going to go, so I can make sure that I own the right stocks, the right bonds, I sell the right ones, I buy the right ones, etc. How can we better our performance? What are the things we need to do?
Again, that's there's many aspects of that, but so if you think about something like, if you picture yourself looking at the market or sitting in a meeting. So let's picture two parts of yourself. So one day you had a great sleep the night before, you went out and walked your dog for an hour, you were out in nature, and you had lots of ideas about a meeting that you were about to go into, and then you come into your house and you sit down for your meeting, I would suspect that your brain, because of all the things that you just did, you've got vasodilation, you've got time in nature, which inspires your creative thinking. You might have your connection to your dog, or maybe you wave to a neighbor in your community, whatever that is. All of those things are going to improve your performance in that meeting. Okay. So versus a day where you wake up and you're hungover, you didn't have a good night's sleep, you're exhausted, you woke up and you did a deep dive into a bunch of really crappy news stories that made you angry, and you were sitting and you didn't eat a good breakfast, that morning, you're not going to perform as well. So there's the physiological areas of performance that are very important. And then to me, performance is structuring our life with connections and inspirations that allow us to push ourselves to that next level. So for each person, those connections and inspirations are a little different, but understand that you need them. You need them to stay motivated. You need them to inspire you to keep going. And in a pandemic, you need them more than ever. So you should be actively searching those out, because they will give you a little bit of extra motivation to perform better.
And so now let's talk about happiness, and give us some advice on how we can improve our happiness.
The study that I quote in the book related to this is, I'm sure you're familiar with the Harvard men's study. So the Harvard men's study, I'll just give you a little synopsis. 2 groups of men, 1 Harvard graduates, and then they did a comparable group of men that lived in the city of Boston. Okay. They followed these men their whole lives, and they measured all kinds of variables on them. They measured physiological variables, so what was their health like? But they also did many series of psychological evaluations, checking happiness, checking mental stability, checking, obviously where they ended up in life. And it was very interesting because most of the original researchers, there's a great TED talk on this, most of the original researchers of this study thought that greater economic success would lead to greater health and would lead to greater happiness. And they found that that is not true. What led to the best health and the best happiness was greater relationships. And so to me and to everyone in the science world, that was kind of a mind-blowing thing, because we always believe that health and economics go hand in hand. But there's something very crucial about the quality of your relationships. And this study didn't say that you needed to have a bunch of high quality relationships, but it said that you need to have a few very high quality relationships. And that is a direct tie into happiness, which is also directly tied to your hormones and your physiology. And that's why it's so important. And I think many of us take relationships for granted. And I know those of us that do business, Tim and I have been doing this a long time. And when this pandemic first started, I remember saying to him, this is so hard. And we did find that our relationships that were strong, so whether it was with our clients or with our landlords, that is what got us through this. And I think that as a business person, if you realize that as you go through your career, creating real relationships and creating good relationships will enhance your happiness, along with wine.
I have my quote here that some have seen.
Yeah. Only good wine. Let's put that there. You don't have as much of a hangover.
Can you have bad wine?
Yeah. Better quality is less hangover. So it's okay. Again, that's something to strive for.
All right, doctor. I'm going to take your advice on that. So in going through, I'm making my way through the book, and you give examples specifically about how to tweak your instinct, because when I've done a lot of coaching of hockey myself, and I always said, okay, so you're really good. Coach, I'm terrible on the backhand. How do I get, but I have a great forehand. My wrist shot's the best on the team. Okay, well, just stop doing the backhand, please, and get working more on this wrist shot, because every time you shoot, you have like a greater chance of scoring. So can we please work on that? So I was always a proponent of that sort of thinking. But when you think about our instincts, because we're constantly looking at information and affecting health, affecting performance, affecting happiness. What are some of the things that tweaks that we can do specifically? Give us some examples, if you can, of things we can do to say, okay, and you gave us some, but anything else you can provide?
I love that you gave a movement example, because obviously that's the wheelhouse I'm most comfortable in. If you look at your instincts as a neuronal pathway in your brain, in the book, I talk about we all have an instinct and a movement pattern to run. Very few of us run as fast or as well as Andre DeGrasse. And why is that? Okay. And your hockey player example. So why is it that, he has a good forehand, but his backhand sucks? So in reality, when we're looking at the facts and we're looking at what is actually going on here, it's practice and grooving the good neuronal pathways. So if we were exposed to sports the same way Andre DeGrasse was, and we had any level of genetic potential at all, we would become much better runners than we are today. So the more you groove a good pathway, the better and more efficient that instinct becomes. And that's why it's so crucial to groove the good instincts and to understand which ones are the good ones. And when you understand that, so in the book, I talk about, there are instincts that we have to partner up with other people and have children together. Well, those are not always good instincts to follow when it's your coworker or someone like that, right? So that's a very good example of something like you don't just randomly follow those. You understand that, you say, oh, I'm feeling this way. And then your brain has to say, oh, that's not an instinct that I follow, because then I'm going to be on the news and then it's going to be a problem and there's going to be a scandal. Okay. And we know many people that don't understand that concept. So the key is, what are the good instincts? So movement is a good one, and you groove those instincts. And what are the ones that we don't want to groove? And those are the ones that we understand, but we say, okay, don't groove that one. So another good example is instincts for communication. We all have them. We all are born with a pathway to speak and to listen. Some people become phenomenal speakers. We have like our Oprah Winfrey's of the world. Some people have not grooved that pathway and they're not as good at it. So if you want to groove a pathway related to an instinct, you have to actively do that. And it comes with repetition and practice. Your hockey player needed to work on his backhand over and over and over again. And I promise you, it would become as good as his forehand.
Okay. And, if anyone has a question, just scroll down to the bottom of your page and you'll see a Q&A tab. And if you type it in, I'll make sure to ask Dr. Irving your question. I'm just going to launch our poll here, and bang, so that everybody can tell us what a great job that you did and give us some advice for new guests. Thank you. So, I had this, in fact, I want to see what you think. So in our work, we always focus on the ones we got wrong. And we said, okay, we got this call, we got it wrong. Okay, let's focus on that. Let's write it again. Let's look at it carefully so it never happens again. But the one we got right, oh, well, we're the greatest. I'm smart. I'm good. Of course I got it right. I always get it right. And we leave that aside. I tell the guys, the one you got right, I want you to study that. I want you to figure out why you got it right, so that the next time it comes, we're going to do the same thing again. Am I crazy?
No, you're speaking my language. So what they're doing is you're instructing them to follow their good instinct, and you're grooving that instinct. Very smart. Okay. The only thing I think you should do from the mistake is recognize it and move away from it. Do not groove the mistake. Don't keep talking about it. Don't keep, processing it in your brain. Take the win figure out, why did I do that? How did I do that? Keep thinking about it. Then the win becomes the dominant pattern in your brain. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. And that's why the facts are important, because you have to know, why did the win happen? But you have to look at it analytically, not emotionally. And I think that's where sometimes our ego gets involved, like, oh, I got that just because I'm great. No, it's because, you did something, but what was it? Like, was it the way you interpreted the facts, or was it the way you communicated to your team? What was it? And then do it again and do it better the next time.
Well done. Last, I want to ask you to leave us with something. If there were three things that we could do now as we're coming out of COVID, that would help us improve our happiness, our health, and our performance, there were three things we can focus on. I think that would be really helpful, that we can leave all our listeners with.
Okay, I love that. So number one, less screen time, and most importantly, less kind of garbage media, downward spirals on the screen. Okay, so take your phone and don't just keep watching the headlines. Set it down, take a break, and go outside. Okay, that's number one. Number two, exercise regularly, more exercise, building strength, building endurance. That is something we all need right now, because ultimately it builds our immunity. So pay attention to things that are going to build your immunity. So that's exercise at a decent level. That's good nutrition, making sure you're up on your vitamin D, your vitamin K, those things. So that's a secondary focus. And number three, an active focus on connecting with people you care about. So whether it's your clients that you like, or whether it's your family, or whether it's your friends, don't think that connections just happen passively. It's really worth your while, it's worth your energy, and it's worth your time to be the person that plans the party or that plans the dinner, that says, you know what, I like these people and I want to connect with them. And sometimes, we're always like, oh, they haven't called me for a while. That doesn't matter. You do it, you be the high performer, and know that those connections are really healthy for you on many different levels.
Wonderful. And if people want some more advice, please go to the Totum facilities. There's 5 of them in Toronto. And Dr. Irvine is also frequently on Cityline and Breakfast Television, and appears in numerous print magazines, writing articles. Recently, I picked one up in Tonic, where she described the whole concept that we discussed here regarding instincts. So with that, I'll sign off. Doctor, thanks for your time. And go Leafs go.
Go Leafs go. I was just going to say that.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.